Can you make it rain harder? When Prince spoke those 5 words to production designer Bruce Rodgers at 6:30 p.m. on February 4th, 2007, the entire Super Bowl XLI production team froze. A downpour was hammering Miami's Dolphin Stadium. 93 million viewers were watching live. The stage floor had become a slippery death trap. Electrical equipment was shorting out in the rain. NFL officials were calculating emergency scenarios. And Prince, wearing a turquoise jacket and orange shirt, was asking for more rain. Rodgers couldn't believe what he was hearing through his walkie-talkie. This wasn't bravado. This was calculated genius. Prince had understood something no one else had. The rain wouldn't ruin his performance. It would make it legendary. If this story matters to you, subscribe now so you won't miss the continuing chapters. 3 hours earlier, the sky over Miami had been clear. Don Misher, the veteran producer who had orchestrated 10 Super Bowl halftime shows, was reviewing final preparations with his technical crew. The modular stage, designed in the shape of Prince's iconic love symbol, sat ready on massive transport platforms. Hundreds of volunteers were rehearsing the choreographed sprint that would wheel the stage onto the field in under 4 minutes. Prince had spent the previous weeks preparing in Las Vegas, where his residency shows had doubled as rehearsal sessions. The band practiced transitions by marking the stage shape on the floor with tape, running through the medley that would compress 7 songs into 12 minutes. But weather forecasts had been uncertain. Miami in February could mean sunshine or storms, and no one had truly prepared for what was coming. At 5:45 p.m., the first drops began falling. Within 15 minutes, the downpour had intensified. The production crew watched in growing alarm as water pooled on the reflective stage surface. The material, a specially designed mylar that created stunning visual effects under stage lights, had one critical flaw. It became lethally slippery when wet. Bruce Rodgers, whose production design had won industry awards, now faced his worst nightmare. Every calculation, every safety protocol, every contingency plan was being destroyed by nature. The crew had anticipated rain, of course. They had water-resistant cable insulation, backup electrical systems, drainage channels built into the stage design. But this level of rainfall exceeded every projection. In the production control room, technical coordinators monitored equipment status on dozens of screens. Voltage readings fluctuated as rain penetrated protective casings. Camera operators reported water streaming down their lenses. The stage crew stationed around the field perimeter communicated constant updates through their headsets. Section 3 cables submerged. Dancer path completely soaked, equipment readings unstable. Then came the disaster that could have ended everything. At approximately 6:10 p.m. during the frantic final stage assembly, a forklift operator maneuvered one of the massive platform sections onto the field. The precision required was extraordinary. Hundreds of separate pieces had to lock together perfectly to form the symbol shape. In the chaos of the downpour, visibility was compromised. The forklift's heavy wheels rolled over a critical cable bundle. The sound was barely audible over the rain and crowd noise, a muffled crack as protective insulation compressed and copper wires severed. But on the control board, the effect was immediate. Power readings dropped across multiple stage sections. Lighting circuits went dark. The communication systems that allowed Prince and his band to hear each other faltered. Tony Ward, a lighting crew technician, was stationed near the cable path when the accident occurred. He had worked hundreds of concerts, had seen equipment failures and last-minute crises, but this was different. They had minutes, not hours, to solve a problem that normally required a complete cable replacement and extensive testing. Ward made a decision that would later be described by Don Misher as either brilliantly heroic or insanely reckless. He grabbed his utility knife, dropped to his knees in the pooling water, and began stripping the damaged cable's insulation. His hands worked quickly, exposing the severed copper strands. Rain streamed down his face as he manually twisted the connections back together. There was no proper insulation available, no time for weatherproof repairs, no opportunity to test the connection under safe conditions. Ward simply held the exposed wires together with his bare hands. The electrical current flowing through those cables could cause severe injury or death under the right conditions. Yet for the next 12 minutes, Ward would maintain that connection, crouched in the rain, his body serving as a human circuit completion. When Don Mischer learned the full details of what Ward had done, not during the show, but in the hours afterward, he felt a wave of retroactive terror. "If I had known what he was doing during the performance," Mischer later told interviewers, "it would have terrified me." But in that moment, all Mischer knew was that power had been restored. The show could continue, and they were running out of time. Backstage, Prince appeared remarkably calm. Those who worked with him regularly understood this was typical. He maintained almost supernatural composure before performances, engaging in breathing exercises and mental preparation rituals that seemed to place him in a different psychological space. But even his longtime band members noticed something unusual that evening. Prince wasn't just calm. He was energized. Morris Hayes, Prince's keyboardist and musical director, observed this transformation firsthand. In the staging area, while production crews rushed past with walkie-talkies crackling urgent updates, Prince stood still. He adjusted his turquoise jacket, the color chosen specifically to create striking visual contrast against the stage's purple lighting. The orange shirt underneath added warmth to the palette, a deliberate choice that would photograph beautifully under television cameras. When Bruce Rodgers approached Prince with concerns about the worsening conditions, he expected resistance, frustration, perhaps even the legendary perfectionist anger that Prince occasionally displayed when circumstances threatened his vision. Instead, Prince listened to the production designer's assessment of the risks. Compromised electrical systems, dangerous footing for dancers, potential equipment failures, the possibility that rain might force them to switch to a pre-recorded backup performance. Prince's response was brief. "How bad can we make this look?" Rodgers initially misunderstood the question. He began explaining that they were doing everything possible to minimize the visual impact of the rain, that camera angles could be adjusted, that lighting could compensate for the gray sky backdrop. Prince interrupted. "No. I mean, can you make it rain harder?" The question hung in the air between them. Through Rodgers' walkie-talkie, the entire production crew heard it. In the control room, Don Mischer and his team exchanged glances of disbelief. The technical coordinators monitoring equipment status wondered if they had misheard. But Prince's logic, once he explained it, was undeniable. Every other Super Bowl halftime show had been designed for perfect conditions, controlled lighting, predictable weather, manufactured spectacle. The rain was giving them something no amount of planning could create: genuine drama, real stakes, nature itself becoming part of the performance. The question wasn't how to fight the storm, it was how to harness it. Rodgers found himself nodding, even as part of his brain screamed that this violated every safety protocol he'd ever learned. The rain wouldn't stop. The show had to go on. And if they were going to perform in a downpour anyway, why not make the downpour itself part of the legend? At 6:32 p.m., the volunteer crew sprinted onto the field. 400 people moving in coordinated precision, wheeling the massive stage sections from the sidelines to the center of the field. Television cameras captured the choreography. It was always impressive, but that night, with rain creating dramatic halos around the stadium lights, it looked almost mythical. The stage locked into place. The love symbol stood complete on the 50-yard line, and then from beneath the stage, through the rain, Prince emerged. The opening was pure Queen. "We Will Rock You." The stomp, stomp, clap rhythm that 93 million people could feel in their chests. But this wasn't a full cover. Prince used it as an intro blast, a pure energy statement before launching immediately into "Let's go crazy." The guitar riff cut through the rain like electricity, and suddenly the conditions that had seemed like obstacles became advantages. Water cascaded off Prince's jacket as he moved. The stage lights reflecting off the wet surface created prismatic effects that no dry performance could achieve. When he hit the first pose, guitar held high, rain streaming down, cameras caught an image that would become iconic. A lone figure commanding a storm. The Florida A&M University Marching 100 joined him for "Baby, I'm a Star," their instruments somehow maintaining sound quality despite the downpour. The transition into "Proud Mary," the Creedence Clearwater Revival classic that Tina Turner had made legendary, brought an unexpected warmth to the performance. Prince's voice, normally known for its falsetto range, dropped into a soulful mid-register that cut through the weather. Technical teams worked frantically throughout. Camera operators manually wiped lenses between shots. Audio engineers constantly adjusted levels to compensate for rain interference. In one corner of the stage, Tony Ward still crouched with exposed cables in his hands, maintaining the connection that kept the show alive. None of this was visible to the television audience. They saw only perfection. The medley shifted into "All Along the Watchtower," the Bob Dylan song that Jimi Hendrix had transformed into an electric blues masterpiece. Prince's version acknowledged the Hendrix influence while creating something entirely his own. The guitar solo here served as setup for what would come later, a preview of the virtuosity that would eventually cause controversy. Then came "Best of You," the Foo Fighters anthem that seemed like an unusual choice for a Prince performance until you heard him transform it. The rock energy, the raw vocal power, it showcased a side of Prince that mainstream audiences sometimes forgot. He wasn't just the pop genius of Purple Rain or the funk master of Kiss. He could command any genre, any style on a stage in a rainstorm with 93 million people watching. At approximately 6:40 p.m., as the rain reached its heaviest point of the evening, Prince signaled for the moment everyone had been waiting for. The opening notes of Purple Rain rang out across Dolphin Stadium. The Florida A&M Marching 100 positioned around the stage perimeter, joined with a brass arrangement that added orchestral depth to the familiar melody. Prince moved to the center of the stage, where a special lighting effect had been prepared. Behind him, a large scrim, a translucent fabric screen, was positioned to catch his silhouette. The stage lighting, carefully calibrated by the Emmy-nominated technical crew, projected his shadow onto this surface. As Prince played the guitar solo, 93 million viewers saw his outline, magnified and dramatic against the white background. The solo itself was classic Prince, technically brilliant, emotionally powerful, building in intensity with each phrase. His fingers moved across the fretboard with the precision that had made him legendary, while rain continued to fall. Water streamed off his guitar, creating visual trails in the stage lights. The moment was perfect, transcendent, exactly what live music was supposed to be. It was also, according to some viewers, inappropriately suggestive. The silhouette effect, combined with the guitar's neck extending upward at a particular angle, created a visual that certain audience members interpreted as phallic. Within hours of the broadcast ending, complaints began arriving at the Federal Communications Commission. The Smoking Gun, a website that specializes in obtaining and publishing legal documents, later reported that more than 150 people filed official FCC complaints about the Super Bowl 41 broadcast. The majority cited either the Prince halftime show or a Snickers commercial featuring male actors kissing. For Prince's segment specifically, complainants argued that the shadow imagery was deliberately sexual in nature and inappropriate for a family television event. CBS, the broadcasting network, defended the performance. In statements to press outlets, including CBS News, network representatives emphasized that the silhouette was an artistic choice. that any suggestive interpretation was unintended, and that the performance had been reviewed and approved by all relevant parties before broadcast, the FCC ultimately took no action against the network. For Prince, who had built a career on pushing boundaries and challenging conventional morality, the controversy was probably exactly what he would have wanted. The performance was already legendary for its technical achievement and emotional power. The complaint scandal ensured it would also be unforgettable for cultural reasons. As the final notes of Purple Rain echoed across the stadium, Prince held his guitar high one last time. Rain continued to fall. 93 million people watched, and somewhere beneath the stage, Tony Ward finally released his grip on the cables he'd been holding for 12 minutes, his hands cramping from the sustained tension. The volunteer crew reversed their earlier choreography, dismantling the stage in record time to allow the game's second half to begin. As the sections rolled off the field, production crew members could finally assess the full extent of the night's technical challenges. Multiple equipment pieces had suffered water damage. Several backup systems had activated during the performance. The cable that Tony Ward had manually repaired would need complete replacement before it could ever be used again. Don Mischer, conducting post-show debriefings with his team, learned the full story of Ward's heroic repair. The realization of what could have gone wrong, electrocution, equipment failure, injury to performers or crew, would haunt him for years. But it also reinforced what had made the performance special. Everyone involved had pushed beyond normal limits, had taken risks that no safety manual would approve, all in service of creating something extraordinary. Critical reception was immediate and overwhelmingly positive. Khalifa Saneh, writing for the New York Times, called it surely one of the most thrilling halftime shows ever, certainly the most unpredictable and perhaps the best. The Chicago Tribune's Mark Caro noted that mini concerts like Prince's justified the entire halftime show concept, proving that abbreviated performances could be meaningful artistic statements rather than mere entertainment breaks. Billboard magazine, conducting its comprehensive ranking of Super Bowl halftime performances in 2015, placed Prince at the top. Their assessment emphasized how the rain had transformed what might have been a competent professional performance into something transcendent, a genuine moment of live music magic that television cameras happened to capture. Rolling Stone readers, surveyed multiple times over the years following the performance, consistently ranked Prince's Super Bowl appearance among the greatest live music moments in television history. The combination of technical virtuosity, dramatic visual impact, and genuine uncertainty about whether the show would succeed created a perfect storm, quite literally, of entertainment value. The Emmy Awards recognized the broadcast's technical achievement, nominating the production team for outstanding technical direction, camera work, and video control. The credits listed an extensive crew: Eric Becker, David Bernstein, Robert Bolton, Danny Webb, Ray Hoover, John Burdick, Geoffrey Rosero, Mark Sanford, and Rob Levy, among the camera and video control operators who had worked through the rain to capture every moment. Nielsen Media Research reported that the Super Bowl 41 broadcast reached approximately 93 million viewers. The audio engineering, managed by a technical crew whose specific members remained uncredited in most public documentation, faced extraordinary challenges. Rain interferes with sound in multiple ways. It dampens certain frequencies, creates ambient noise, and can damage sensitive equipment. Yet the broadcast audio remained crisp and clear, with Prince's vocals and guitar cutting through the storm without distortion or loss of quality. The Florida A and M University Marching 100 deserve special mention for their professionalism. Maintaining instrumental performance quality in heavy rain requires not just skill, but physical endurance. Brass instruments fill with water, woodwinds become unplayable, and percussion equipment can be damaged beyond repair. Yet their arrangements remain tight, their timing precise, their contribution to the overall sound essential to the performance's success. Don Micher's role as executive producer involved making dozens of real-time decisions that would only be fully understood by production professionals. Camera angles had to be adjusted for rain visibility. Lighting cues needed constant refinement as natural light conditions changed. Backup plans for equipment failure had to remain ready even as the primary systems somehow continued functioning. The result was a production that looked effortless on screen but represented the absolute peak of live television technical achievement. Every department, cameras, audio, lighting, stage management, broadcast control, performed at their highest possible level under the worst possible conditions. Before Prince's 2007 appearance, Super Bowl halftime shows followed a relatively predictable formula. Major pop stars performed abbreviated versions of their hit songs, often with elaborate stage productions featuring pyrotechnics, costume changes, and guest appearances. The emphasis was on spectacle over substance, entertainment over artistry. Prince's performance maintained the spectacle, the love symbol stage, the Florida A&M Marching 100, the dramatic lighting effects, but added something that had been missing from most halftime shows: genuine musical virtuosity. The guitar solos weren't pre-recorded. The vocal performances weren't backed by protective layers of processing. This was live music at its highest level, executed under impossible conditions, proving that mainstream entertainment could also be legitimate art. More broadly, Prince's Super Bowl appearance reinforced arguments about the value of live music in an increasingly digital entertainment landscape. In an era when lip-syncing at major events had become common, when backing tracks and auto-tune made studio-quality sound achievable in any venue, Prince demonstrated why genuine live performance still mattered. The imperfections caused by rain, the slight variations in timing, the adjusted vocal techniques, the real-time problem-solving made the performance more compelling, not less. Music industry observers noted another lasting impact. The performance proved that veteran artists could compete with younger acts for mainstream attention. Prince was 48 years old at the time of the Super Bowl, decades past the age when many pop musicians are considered commercially viable. Yet his performance dominated cultural conversation for weeks, introduced his music to younger audiences unfamiliar with his earlier work, and demonstrated that experience and mastery could be more valuable than youthful energy. The FCC complaints about the silhouette imagery, while numerically modest compared to the 93 million viewers, generated substantial media coverage. CBS News devoted multiple segments to the controversy. Entertainment websites published frame-by-frame analyses of the disputed footage. Social media platforms, still in their relative infancy in 2007, buzzed with debates about whether the visual effect was intentional or accidental. The genius of the disputed moment was its ambiguity. Was it a deliberately sexual image designed to generate controversy? Or was it simply a shadow cast by a man playing guitar, with any suggestive interpretation existing entirely in the viewer's mind? The question was unanswerable, which made it perfect for the social media age that was just beginning to reshape cultural discourse. From a marketing perspective, the controversy was invaluable. Prince's performance would have been memorable, based purely on its musical and technical merits. The FCC complaints ensured it would also be discussed, debated, shared, and referenced for years beyond the initial broadcast. In an entertainment landscape where cultural relevance could be measured in sustained conversation, the controversial silhouette kept Prince at the center of popular discussion. While public discussion focused on the artistic and technical achievement, those who worked the Super Bowl halftime show remembered the physical and emotional toll. Tony Ward's heroic cable repair left him with hand cramping that lasted days. The exposure to cold rain while maintaining electrical contact had risked both injury and hypothermia. He had sacrificed personal safety for the success of the performance, a decision that might be called brave or reckless depending on perspective. Prince himself pushed through physical discomfort that would have stopped many performers. At 48, he was dealing with the accumulated wear of decades of high-energy performances. His hip problems, which would eventually require surgery and contribute to the pain management issues that led to his tragic death in 2016, were already affecting his movement. Dancing in the rain on a slippery surface in high-heeled boots required not just skill but genuine physical courage. Yet somehow they succeeded, not just adequately but brilliantly. The human cost, Ward's cramping hands, the crew's exposure to dangerous conditions, Prince's physical pain, the psychological pressure on everyone involved, was invisible to viewers who saw only perfection. This gap between the visible performance and the invisible suffering required to achieve it defined the entire enterprise. The performance influenced thinking about live music production beyond halftime shows. Concert promoters became more willing to proceed with outdoor events despite weather concerns. Television producers recognized that genuine uncertainty could enhance rather than diminish audience engagement. Artists learned that vulnerability, admitting the possibility of failure, could make success more meaningful. For Prince personally, the Super Bowl performance represented a late career vindication. After years of battles with record labels, controversial artistic choices, and periods of reduced commercial visibility, he had proven his relevance to the largest possible audience. The performance reminded the music industry and general public why he was considered one of the greatest performers in popular music history. Bruce Rodgers' production design, initially seen as potentially disastrous when rain began falling, was ultimately recognized as brilliantly adaptable. The love symbol stage shape wasn't just visually distinctive, its engineering accounted for contingencies that seemed unlikely but proved crucial. The drainage systems, the modular construction, the material choices, all reflected a design philosophy that prepared for worst-case scenarios while hoping for the best. When Prince died on April 21, 2016, found in an elevator at his Paisley Park complex, the Super Bowl performance returned to cultural prominence. News coverage of his death invariably included footage from that rainy night in Miami. The image of him playing guitar while rain streamed down, silhouetted against the white scrim, became the defining visual of obituaries and tribute pieces. The circumstances surrounding his death revealed the hidden vulnerabilities behind the public mastery. Medical examiners determined he had died from an accidental overdose of counterfeit medication. Pills manufactured to look like legitimate prescription painkillers but containing lethal levels of fentanyl. The tragedy highlighted the dangers of the illicit drug market, where fake medications can be indistinguishable from real ones until it's too late. The man who had commanded a stage in a rainstorm, who had turned impossible conditions into art, had been lost to circumstances he likely didn't fully understand. His death sparked conversations about pain management, the opioid crisis, and the specific dangers of counterfeit medications that continue to claim lives across all demographics. Yet the Super Bowl performance remained a testament to what he had achieved at his peak. For 12 minutes on February 4th, 2007, Prince had been exactly who he had always claimed to be. The greatest performer of his generation, capable of transforming any circumstance into art, able to make even a storm bow to his vision. The rain that had threatened to ruin his performance had instead made it immortal. The technical failures that could have caused disaster had been overcome through heroism and improvisation. The physical risk that might have resulted in injury had been navigated through skill and courage. And 93 million people had watched it all happen in real time, witnessing one of those rare moments when everything that could go wrong instead went perfectly right. Bruce Rodgers, in a quiet moment years after the performance, perhaps summed it up best when he described his reaction to Prince's question about making the rain harder. "I thought he was crazy. Then I realized he was a genius. Then I understood those were the same thing. The stage was dismantled. The equipment was dried and repaired. Tony Ward's hands healed. But the memory of that night, the rain, the risk, the 12 minutes when Prince proved why legends become legends would live forever. Because sometimes when conditions are perfect, you get a good show, but when everything goes wrong and someone with enough talent and courage refuses to surrender to circumstance, you get something that transcends entertainment and becomes art. You get history. You get Prince in the rain asking for more.